When people talk about the great chiefs of Hawaii, one name often overshadows the rest: Kamehameha the Great, the unifier of the islands. But long before Kamehameha's dream of unification became reality, another warrior king cast his thunderous shadow over the Hawaiian Islands. Chief Kahekili II, the King of Maui. Known as Kahekili the Thunderer, he was a man both feared and admired, ruthless yet deeply tied to the gods and traditions of his people. Welcome back to Your Nerdy Show. I'm your host, Spoiler Master. Kahekili's story is not just about war and conquest, it's about culture, identity, and the struggle for power during one of the most turbulent times in Hawaiian history. His life set the stage for the battles that would eventually shape the future of the islands. So who was Chief Kahekili? Why was he called the Thunderer? And how did his rise and fall change the course of Hawaiian history? Let's dive into his origins and unravel the life of one of the most legendary chiefs of Hawaii. Early life and rise to power. Kahekili was born around 1737 into one of the most powerful families in Maui. His father was Kahekili, the ruling king of Maui, and his mother was Kekuiapoiwa II, a queen with high-ranking noble blood. From the start, Kahekili was destined for leadership. Unlike commoners, ali'i, Hawaiian royalty, were raised in an environment steeped in the traditions of kapu, the sacred laws that governed every aspect of Hawaiian society. Chiefs were considered closer to the gods than ordinary people, their very existence tied to divine authority. Kahekili grew up with the knowledge that he was not only a leader of men, but also a living representative of the god's will. From a young age, he was trained in the ways of war. Hawaiian society in the 18th century was constantly marked by inter-island conflict. Chiefs fought not only for land and resources, but also for mana, the spiritual power that came from victory, prestige, and divine favor. Kahekili quickly embraced this world, proving himself as a fierce warrior who valued strength, cunning, and fearlessness above all else. When his father Kahekili died, Kahekili rose to the throne of Maui, but he was not content to simply rule his inherited land. He wanted to expand his power, to become a king who would dominate not just Maui, but all the surrounding islands. The thunder god's namesake. The very name Kahekili carried divine weight. It translates to the thunder, directly linking him to Kahekili, the Hawaiian god of thunder. This connection shaped the way Kahekili ruled. To his people, he wasn't just a man, he was thunder made flesh, a figure who carried the destructive force of nature in his hands. One of the most fascinating and terrifying aspects of Kahekili's identity was his appearance. According to oral histories, Kahekili tattooed one entire side of his body from head to toe in solid black ink. The effect was striking. He resembled the split sky during a lightning storm, one half bright and the other shrouded in darkness. This was more than a personal choice, it was a deliberate act of psychological warfare. When enemies faced Kahekili in battle, they weren't just fighting a man, they were confronting an image of a god. To his warriors, this display reinforced his divine authority. To his enemies, it was a vision of terror. In Hawaiian culture, tattooing, or kaku, was both art and ritual. It was a physical symbol of courage, pain endurance, and spiritual power. By covering half of his body, Kahekili was signaling that he embodied duality, life and death, light and darkness, creation and destruction. Expansion and conquest. Kahekili's ambitions reached far beyond Maui. Through a combination of ruthless strategies, military brilliance, and political maneuvering, he extended his power over Molokaʻi, Lanai, and eventually Oʻahu. His conquest of Oʻahu in particular stands out as one of his greatest achievements. By the 1880s, Kahekili launched a campaign to seize the island, and after fierce fighting, he succeeded. Once in control, he placed his loyal chiefs in power, ensuring his dominance over Oahu's resources and people. This expansion meant that Kahekili controlled some of the richest and most strategic lands in the Hawaiian chain. His rule stretched across multiple islands, making him one of the most powerful leaders in Hawaiian history before Kamehameha. But Kahekili was not only a conqueror, he was also a tactician who knew how to use alliances to his advantage. By arranging strategic marriages and forging relationships with influential chiefs, he strengthened his hold over the islands. He understood that power in Hawaii was not only about victory on the battlefield, but also about navigating the complex network of ali'i families and their loyalties. The rivalry with Kamehameha. No story about Kahekili is complete without addressing his legendary rivalry with Kamehameha I, the man who would eventually unite the Hawaiian Islands. Kamehameha was younger, ambitious, and equally ruthless. While Kahekili dominated much of the archipelago, Kamehameha was consolidating power on Hawaiʻi Island. Their paths were destined to collide, and the tension between them shaped the politics of the late 18th century.
Though Kahekili and Kamehameha never faced each other directly in a decisive battle, their rivalry was clear. Kahekili represented the old guard of power, the reigning thunder of Maui and Oʻahu. Kamehameha represented the rising storm, a new kind of leader with dreams of unification that had never been achieved before. When Kahekili died in 1794, his passing created a power vacuum. His successor, Kalaniʻōpuʻu, lacked the same strength and leadership skills. Within a year, Kamehameha seized the opportunity, defeating Kahekili's successor at the Battle of Nu'uunu on Oʻahu. This decisive victory marked a turning point in Hawaiian history, paving the way for Kamehameha to eventually unify the islands under one rule. Kahekili's legacy. Kahekili's story does not end with his death. His legacy continued to echo through Hawaiian culture and history in profound ways. First, he remains remembered as a symbol of fearlessness and cultural pride. His tattooing practices stand as one of the most iconic symbols of Hawaiian identity. Even today, Hawaiian tattoo artistry carries echoes of Kahekili's bold, half-body ink, representing resilience, strength, and connection to the divine. Second, Kahekili is remembered as one of the last great independent chiefs before unification. Without Kahekili's dominance and expansion, Kamehameha's rise might have looked very different. In many ways, Kahekili laid the groundwork for the eventual unification of the islands. Even if that wasn't his intention, his wars, conquests, and rivalries created the political landscape that Kamehameha eventually inherited and transformed. Kahekili remains a cultural figure whose life bridges the gap between myth and history. Like many ali'i, his story is told not just through recorded history, but also through chants, oral traditions, and cultural memory. These stories elevate him from a mere man into something larger, a force of nature, a thunderclap across Hawaiian history. Chief of War and Modern Retellings. Kahekili's legacy continues to inspire modern storytelling. In shows like Chief of War, his life is retold for new audiences, reminding us of the struggles and bloodshed that defined pre-unification Hawaii. These retellings are more than entertainment. They serve as a way to reconnect with Hawaiian history, bringing back stories of gods, warriors, and leaders who shaped the islands long before Western contact changed everything. Kahekili's story is not just about one man. It's about an entire era where power, spirituality, and warfare were deeply intertwined. Our nerdy thoughts. Chief Kahekili II, the Thunderer, was more than just a ruler. He was a living embodiment of power, fear, and cultural identity. Born into nobility, he rose as a warrior king who expanded his rule across multiple islands, struck fear into his enemies with his godlike appearance, and clashed indirectly with the man who would one day unify Hawaii. Though he died before seeing Kamehameha's rise to dominance, Kahekili's influence shaped the course of Hawaiian history.
his half-black tattoos, his name tied to the god of thunder, and his ruthless ambition ensured that his story would never be forgotten. Kahekili's life represents the thunder before the storm, the era of independent chiefs that gave way to the unification of the islands. And while history often celebrates Kamehameha as the unifier, we must not forget Kahekili, the warrior chief whose thunder still echoes through Hawaii's past.
No, what the heck, I'll laugh anyway.